very much going into the unknown. Never done a cycling trip like this before. Never cycled that far before, and never been to that part of the world before either. And with the added combination of the potential radiation risks as well, there's a lot to take into account.
I'm in a bit of a balls up, massive balls up actually. I tried pumping my tyre when I didn't need to. It deflated, and I spent wasted about 2 hours fixing it. And yeah, amazingly these kind people helped me out to put it back together, the tyre, and unfortunately now I'm cycling in the dark to Kiev, which is not ideal. There hasn't been streetlights up until now, so bit scary, but I'm getting there, I'm on my way.
My preparations for this trip started around about 4 weeks before I left. Before that I had done no training whatsoever, so I was like, okay, better get a bike. So I bought this really shoddy bike from Amazon, and then I was cycling and training on the hills of Kent and Sussex.
Just on the road, very frustrated because I'm not getting anywhere. I'm absolutely exhausted.
The hardest parts of the day were kind of the start and the end, kind of getting out of the towns, trying to find my way out. And then once you're on the road and you're in a good place. I'll be on the road for around about 10 hours a day, from start to finish, and with breaks in between. So when I arrived in the town and finally found the hotel, because most days I wouldn't know where I was staying that night. So you're kind of on the road, kind of into the unknown, and kind of just taking each pedal as it comes, really. So the best moment was crossing the border from Belarus into Ukraine, because Belarus was my biggest worry, my biggest concern, because it's actual fact is where most of the area is affected. It was the time I spent longest in kind of the worst hit areas from the Chernobyl accident. Added to the fact that it was a closed country, and it was a big part of my trip, so just kind of getting through that, ticking that box and getting into Ukraine was such a great feeling. It was brilliant. I mean, just crossing a border on a bicycle, when I've never done a trip like this before, it was just the best feeling you can imagine.
So this is kind of like a normal, typical road, a lot of forest, and and I dropped the camera, and yeah, and you can hear, like, you can see into there, that forest is pretty dark and pretty deep, and you quite often hear noises from the forest, which is always quite disconcerting. Yes, and then there's the bike. If anything goes wrong with this, I've got a long old walk to the next town or village.
My bike held up really well. I mean, on the whole, it held up really well. There were some problems at the start. Alexei, the couch surfer that I met, he took a day out of his PhD to kind of help me, and he had a really tight schedule. He was like, no, you're on a big trip, you're going to need something. So he really fixed up my bike before I left, which was a huge help, absolute lifesaver. The one day I did have some troubles was when I was leaving Gommel, and my bike was making some really weird noises, and my visa was running out that day, so I was too far into kind of a forest to be able to go back to Gommel, and there wasn't enough time to kind of look into fixing it, so I just had to carry on cycling.
So I'm about to roll into Belarus, where tomorrow I will wait for Valentin, who will take me to one of the Chernobyl Children International projects. It's going to be quite a challenging day, I think, tomorrow, but it's the reason why I'm doing this trip. It's been really good to see how Chernobyl Children International are helping out the local area.
Chernobyl Children International were fantastic. I mean, along the way, well, before I even arrived in Belarus, they were kind of giving me support and telling me what I needed in terms of my visa and also things I needed to visit the project as well. And then when I was there, they were kind of making sure that I got to Belarus so that I could meet Valentin. Just visited a Chernobyl Children International project. It was a orphanage for mentally ill children, physically and mentally disabled children. First time I've ever been to a place like that, and yeah, it was humbling experience, I guess. It was difficult to describe. I guess it's like what it felt like at points, you know, when you're going to buy a puppy and you know, you see which one calls out for you and you choose that one. Except that no one's choosing them. That was definitely the toughest day of the trip, because I've never really done anything like that before. So, I mean, Valentin, who came to meet me in where was I, in Belarus, he came to meet me and he was great. He was fantastic. He picked me up and we drove there and kind of gave me a little briefing of what to expect and kind of taught me through, you know, what it was like before they arrived, which I'm really grateful for, because I mean, even though the conditions for the children at the orphanage are really good for them, I mean, I'm really pleased to say that all the kids that could express happiness were, which is amazing. I mean, Chernobyl Children International are doing a fantastic job. This is like really kind of entering the areas where it really has been affected after the Chernobyl accident. You just don't know really, like it's the unknown. It looks perfectly normal, everything looks fine. So it's easy just to ride along and not think of, you know, the damage that it's done to the area, and its people. So you're just kind of oblivious, or it's easy to be ignorant of it as well. So there's a number of social issues that kind of are widespread in the region of kind of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. So it includes kind of really high health problems for children, which obviously develops into adulthood as well, and also alcoholism is a huge problem as well, and that's partly because a lot of people were relocated and moved to different towns and villages, and they lost their livelihoods. I'd definitely tell people about it. I would 100% recommend, because it's one of those things that's got forgotten. The media don't really cover it anymore. Governments are still thinking about getting nuclear power plants, and the effects are huge. So it's definitely a thing we should all talk about and all consider and not forget. And in that way, the right people will hear about it, and the right people can do the right things for the people over there.